We're live on Spiritual Psychics TV with Paul Bannister and his guests for Spiritual Talk.
Hello everybody and welcome to, which is our first Spiritual Talk on SPTV. Welcome and thank you for joining us. It's absolutely brilliant you're here. Wherever you are in the world, we really appreciate it. Tonight we have a fantastic guest. But before we go too much further into that, let's do some hellos to people and thank you for joining us. I'm just waiting for the... Oh, okay. So if you can get a hold of us through Spiritual and Psychic TV, you should be able to follow the link, click on the link and you'll come in. Also, you can look at Spiritual Talk as well. We are always live on a Wednesday evening on Spiritual Talk. And I'm just waiting. Hopefully, we're going to get some people to say hi and where you are in the world. Don't be shy. Come and join us. Come and say hi. Come and say hello. Oh, yes. And also, if you want to check out my own page at Paul Bannister Medium, you can see some of the interviews that we do on Spiritual Talk there as well. It's great to be here. This is my first show, so thank you for joining me. Come and say hello. If you're eating dinner, put your feet up and come and join us. It'll be great to see you guys. Come and say hello. I don't know if we've got any messages yet. Hopefully, I can see it on my screen. No, I've got no, not as yet. I've got no comments yet. Good old Facebook, and you never know. Things go wrong when you're live. Brilliant. No, we've still got nothing yet, but hopefully you guys are saying hello. I'm sure everyone's there. I'm sure everyone's watching. Yeah, no, we've got no messages. We might have to go straight into the interview if we got no messages. Oh, great. Well, yeah, no, I've got yeah. Yes. Yeah. And hopefully any second now. Yeah, still not there. All the best laid plans. Yeah, we can still see the logo. Anyway, if you're joining us this evening, it's great to join us. It's great for you. We can't thank you enough. This is kind of like flying blind. I don't know who's coming on and say that. That's okay. I've got Richard in my ear telling me that the comments are there, but we can't see them. No, we've got nothing. So I'm going to say hello because Richard's telling me who's saying hello. So hello to Deborah Long. Thank you for joining us. Elizabeth Jones, hi. Eva Bertram, hello. Oh, we've got Deborah coming all the way over, coming into us tonight from Canada. Hello, Deborah. Hi, Jasmine Brown. And Kay Harmon, hello. Kelly Osborne, hello, Kelly. Hi, Mary Bell from Texas, hello. Hello, Jay Fleming. Hope you're having a beautiful day. Hi, Rebecca Whelan as well. This is all coming into my ear. So, hi, Liz. First time here. That's brilliant. Nice you to join us on SPTV. And yeah, I hope you're having a sunny day over in Florida. I hope you're having a beautiful day. Hi, Saina. Okay. Okay. So we got a few technical problems for the first show, but not to worry, guys. We've got our guest in the background waiting, and we've got another great guest. But I just want you to think about some of the questions you like to ask Kelvin as well, because Kelvin Chin, I'm going to introduce Kelvin straight away and get him in. So Kelvin is a public speaker, author, and a meditation teacher. He's also the executive director of the founder of turningwithin.org and also the Overcoming the Fear of Death Foundation. Kelvin has written 3 books: Overcoming the Fear of Death, Marcus Aurelius Updated, and his latest book, After the Afterlife, Memories from Past Lives. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kelvin Chin. Hi, Kelvin.
Hey, Paul. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. And thank you for joining us this evening. So you've written quite a few books, but I want to go back into some of the things you do and how you pretty much got started in before we kind of talk about a specific book, actually, your latest book, which has really been interesting. I've been reading that. Where did it all start for you? How did you get into meditation?
Well, it started when I was a teenager. I got into meditation because I was really stressed out. So, given that this, your show is called Spiritual Talk and this TV's station is called Spiritual Psychics TV, I didn't know what spirituality was even when I was a teenager. So if you had asked me what spirituality was, I would have thought it was religion. I thought it was going to church or something, which I did when I was growing up. But by the time I was in university, I wasn't into that anymore. So really, I got into meditation because I was stressed out, in a word. I was really highly anxious. I needed something to relieve my stress. That's why I got into meditation. There was some initial first medical studies being done in 1970s, 1971. And that's what got my interest, was the medical studies, not the spiritual side of meditation. That's how I got in.
Yeah. And you studied a certain type of meditation with quite a special person.
Right. Yeah, I learned transcendental meditation. I kind of did a survey really first before I thought, oh, this kind and there's this kind.
Yeah.
This kind is very concentrated, very difficult. This one is more religious and more kind of monastery oriented. And I picked the one that was none of those. I picked the one that was easy, didn't have to shave my head, although I shave my head now. Anyway, long hair back then, people. Okay, I had long hair. I was a hippie. But that's the one I learned. And I studied personally with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who taught the Beatles to meditate and so forth. I studied with him, and I was an international leader in his organization for about 10 years.
Yeah, fantastic. So when did that start to happen? I say regression into past life experiences. Was that something you realized at first, or was this over a period of time?
It was over experience when they meditate. So I had that experience, thousands of times over those 6-7 years or something. But the first time I had anything past life related, I didn't even know was past life related. It was a bad dream. I had a nightmare. And I didn't know that it had anything to do with past lives until about 6 or 8 months later, when I was telling a friend that I had this really bad dream. And he said, oh, let me finish. And he finished the dream for me. I that's all I told him. And he told me where I was, and I was lying in a ditch, and I was crying and all this. And I said, how did you know that? He said, well, I found you about 2,000 years ago. I said, what are you talking about?
Wow.
So I didn't even believe in this stuff. So I thought he was making it up too. Yeah.
Awesome. We've got the comments back on screen. So guys, please feel free to ask Kelvin any questions about past life and his experiences. Oh, that's interesting. So, so going on from that, Kelvin, you've produced many books. You've produced three actually, and your more recent one, After the Afterlife, is a collection of your experiences of past lives. Before we get into this, though, why do you think we have past life memories?
Well, first of all, most people don't, as most people know, they don't have past life memories. But sometimes they kind of peek through. I think of it like they kind of peek through and they kind of, work their way through the barriers that we all have. And that I think it's in simplistic language. I mean, that's why most people don't remember, because they have various barriers, fears, embarrassment, emotional barrier, who knows what kind of barriers, but they sneak through. And for me, the way I look at it is to teach me more about who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I look at it. Right? So I can learn more about who I am so that I can live more freely and with less suffering and more contentment, we'll say, inner peace in my continual present, because this is who I am now, Kelvin Chin, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Jade. I've just seen your comment come up. And Jade has written, "Hi, Kelvin. Why do I dream? Then they happen for real. Why is this happening?"
I think when this person, he or she dreams, and it happens for real, what they're tapping into in their dreams is a level of their consciousness that's tapping into what I call probabilities, because nothing is guaranteed. But can you foresee a highly probable future and be right about it? Yeah, I've had tons of dreams like that, and I talk about some dreams in my past lives that I'm known for having, predicted, like, the Battle of, Little Bighorn, in the 1800s. Yeah. So is it possible? Yes. Can you be wrong? Yes. Why? Because all kinds of unforeseen circumstances can intervene between the time you have the dream and the time the actual event occurs, and it may not actually occur in the same way, because other people's minds are making choices that are not the same as what choices that you predicted in your dream. So, but that can happen, sure. It's a highly, I would say, highly more accurate the closer the dream is to the actual event happening. So in other words, because there's more probabilities, there's fewer external probabilities, they're going to mess that up, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Jade's also put, "I saw a car crash, then I saw it happen." So that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes if some of the visions we get are premonitions of things about to happen to us. Jasmine Brown has put, "Hi Jasmine, what has going into past lives taught you about yourself and has changed the outlook on life change for you?"
That's a huge
question. That's a great question. Thank you, Jasmine.
Yeah, that's an awesome question, Jasmine. Boy, that's and we could talk for the next couple of weeks about that one, Jasmine.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, I'll say that a more summary statement would be that my past lives have taught me that my mind is more powerful than I've ever realized, and that I've learned so much about humanity over the last 6,000 years that my memories can access. That now, compared to me in the past, I would say I have Kelvin Chin in the 21st century, as opposed to me, whatever, 4,000 or 6,000 or 2,000 or 1,000 years ago. I have a much more humble outlook and a much more empathetic perspective on humanity, because I realize how flawed we all are, me included, that nobody's perfect, and that to the extent that I can do whatever part I do, as you know, Paul, because we've worked together in some of my other classes, I try to help people move forward in a more positive direction. That's what I do. Now, not everybody needs to do that, but that's what I've learned is that to the extent that we as a humanity can move more positively forward, it benefits everybody. Everybody benefits from that. And so my outlook on life has changed in the following really fundamental way. I'll answer it this way. In terms of your question, that part of your question, Jasmine, I am much more patient and acceptant of other people's free will choices that might be different from mine. Now, everybody has free will. Everybody has personal choice to make whatever choices. But I think in my past, even this current lifetime as Kelvin Chin, when I was in my 20s, I was a lot less patient. And I was more trying to conform other people by convincing and persuading them that, for example, they should learn to meditate. Yeah. That's what I was teaching back then. Whereas now it's like, no, if they want to learn to meditate, they'll find me and I will teach them and I will fully engage in teaching them. But I am not into persuading people to do what they don't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Jasmine. That was a great question. So quickly, I want to talk about the afterlife, Kelvin. Yeah. It's a recent book, and it's a collection of some of your past life memories. And wow, you have had some experiences. And for me, Richard the Lionheart. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and the memories that came up for you about Richard the Lionheart? But it's quite a significant character in the English history.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that one really came. Well, they all kind of came out of the blue, quite frankly. But that one was interesting because, you know, I use this example of jigsaw puzzle pieces, and you get a little puzzle piece here, and you get a little puzzle piece here, and you get one here, and you realize, oh, they actually go together in one lifetime. It's not from 2 different or 3 different lifetimes. They're actually from the same one. That's the way I've experienced these past life memories coming together. They don't all of a sudden download. I get pieces. And that one had a whole bunch of pieces. Some of them started in like 1978 or something like that, where I had a vision while I was resting after my meditation, walking into a castle. And I'll just do the very short version. I just walked into a castle, stone room, went up to a mirror. There was nobody else in the room. I went up to a mirror and saw myself in the mirror. And I saw red hair, reddish beard, long red hair. And I filled up the whole mirror, so I knew it was big, but I didn't know how big I was.
Yeah.
And I had chainmail and a white tunic on and a cross. And so that was the first experience. That was 1978. And I didn't keep notes on this. So I recommend people keep notes on this because I never thought I was going to talk about this until a few years ago. I started talking about this stuff. But so maybe it was about, I don't know, within 10 or 15 years after that, I got another jigsaw puzzle piece, and I knew I was 6'5", 230 pounds. Now, where did that come? Just completely out of the blue, I knew how big I was in that lifetime. And I still didn't know who I was at the time. But and then in 2010, so whatever that is, you know, another several decades later, I was meditating with my daughter, and she told me, I was so involved in this experience that I didn't even remember. When I was writing the book, she said, "Daddy, you remember we were meditating once, and then we were resting afterwards, and you started, I told you afterwards you were yelling out Saracens." I was yelling Saracens and with a sword and stuff, and I was yelling this stuff out, and I didn't even know what Saracens was. She didn't know either, so we looked it up. It's in 2010, and we found out that the word Muslims is a recent word for people who follow Muhammad and believe in Islam and so forth. And Allah and all that. It's 1600s to present is Muslim term. Before that, they were called Saracens. So in the 1100s, when I was in the Crusades, that's what I was yelling out. I didn't know that. So all these things came together, and there's basically only one person who was leading the Crusades who was 6'5", 230 pounds, who had red hair. There's only 2% of the world's population has red hair.
Yeah, and it's interesting. He was a direct descendant of William the Conqueror, who was actually, I didn't know this, he was also a redhead. So that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So that's how I triangulated and figured out who that was. Yeah.
Hi, Limo. She's asked a great question. How do you heal patterns you have taken from your past lives? Do you actually understand patterns that are forming from your experiences?
In retrospect, I see patterns. So like after the, on the Monday morning after the weekend, I look back, figuratively speaking, I look back and I see, oh, look at those patterns. So how do I heal them? Yeah, I've processed so many of these emotional patterns that I have from the past. And everybody's different, right? Limo's asking this. Everybody's different. So my method is you can already tell by hearing me talk, I think about things. So I think about what makes sense about the pattern that I'm experiencing. Has it helped me or hurt me in my past experiences in lives and whatever it is, whether it's this lifetime or another lifetime? And can I adjust it to make it my desires more aligned with my thoughts and behavior and the actions and the outcome? Because that's what contentment is, right? Is fulfilling our desires. So I look back afterwards and I go, okay, well, that didn't work, So that's what I suggest people do,
Yeah. And I do wonder, I know your story, Kelvin, and I've read your past books, and I'm kind of wondering, this lifetime, is it an opportunity for you to heal all those experiences that have come up for you? Is it potentially a unique experience?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's how I'm taking it. Who knows how much I'll remember next lifetime, right? So live in the continual present. I'm hoping I remember even more next lifetime, but no, is guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm living in the continual present. So that's how I'm using it. Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, and Lima said she was asking for a friend. Thank you for that question, Lima. Also, Serena. Hi, Serena. Have you ever had loved ones visit you whilst meditating? That's a great question.
Oh, yeah. The short answer is yes, yes, and yes. Yeah. I've had dead loved ones visit me while I was meditating or after I'm meditating. And now, because it's so such a familiar, comfortable experience for me, it happens I'm in the shower or I'm driving my car and the radio's not off and I'm alone just, driving down the highway. It happens to me all different times. Yeah.
It's interesting because you don't identify yourself as a medium, but you can connect.
Yeah. I don't identify myself that way because I don't want to hold myself out to the public that way, but am I connected in that way? Sure. Yeah.
And I hope you don't mind me mentioning, I know you've also helped people to connect to that realm, to that reality, to deal with sometimes with the loss of their loved ones.
Yeah.
You've helped. And that's a very powerful thing to teach, an opportunity to give someone that ability to connect with a loved one that we've lost and we love so dearly.
Yeah.
And can we quickly just talk about some of the programs that you run around that, meditation classes that you do?
Sure. Yeah. I teach meditation. It's a 4-day class. It's not all day. It's like an hour, a couple hours each day, the classes and so forth. People can check out my website and see more details on that.
Yeah.
I give lifetime follow-up after that. People can check in. They can sit in the class forever for life. I teach an afterlife series, which is all about the afterlife, obviously, and reincarnation, so forth. And it's a 6-part every other weekend, so it's over 12 weeks. I do that. This is my 16th time doing that. So if people's interested, they can sign up still and catch the current one, and they can catch up by watching the first session's recording. I do a recording of each one in case anybody misses. And then I do a monthly, every 30th of the month, I do a free, open to the public worldwide, just an open forum Q&A on anything related to afterlife stuff. And like I said, that's available free to anybody in the world. You just register. You go to my website, kelvinchin.org, and you'll find the page there and register to get the Zoom link. And then I do individual sessions with people too and I do a free individual session for anybody about anything that I do. The first session is always free.
Jasmine's got another question. Or is that a question or a statement? Maybe it's your soul has learned time and time again over lifetimes, and you have had visions over lifetimes, that now the visions automatically come to you in this lifetime.
It's possible, yeah. It's a good conjecture.
Yeah.
From Jasmine, yeah. That is very possible. I think that it's highly likely what she's saying, because my experience over the lifetimes is that I learn, even if I don't remember from lifetime to lifetime, there's my soul, as she's saying, or my consciousness, my awareness, my spirit, my mind, whatever, however you want to view it. And when I use the word mind, because I'm working across, as I said, over 60 countries, so I try to use simple English. When I use mind, I mean this mind, like this huge mind, not just this little mind that's picking up a pen or something, but that's my mind too. So I think I've carried with it, and I think we all do. That's the teaching lesson out of my recent book, I think, is that we all carry this stuff forward with us, whether we remember our past lives or not. We continually can learn if we choose to learn, and I choose to learn.
Yeah. Hi, Rebecca. Rebecca's come in from Facebook. She said, I had a premonition that my mum would die in my teens. Saw her in the coffin with pink and white covers. I told her, and she said, don't be silly. 3 weeks later, she had gone. Firstly, we're so sorry for your loss, Rebecca. That must have been quite horrific, having that experience. That was Rebecca.
Yeah, that's so sorry to hear that. I mean, that can happen. Like I said earlier, we can have premonitions. We can see probabilities, and your soul somehow tuned into some obviously very high probabilities.
Yeah.
If she died that soon afterwards, and you can tune into that. I mean, our mind is so much more powerful. This is what I learned from my slave lifetime. 2,300 years ago, when I almost died on a piece of wreckage in the Mediterranean when I was a slave, how powerful our minds are. And if we access that and we allow our minds to open up, experience it, the power of itself, you can have experiences like Rebecca described. It's sad. It's a sad experience.
Yeah.
But it's a powerful experience at the same time. But so sad. So sorry for your loss there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I do wonder if that's a part of her higher self, maybe bracing her for that traumatic experience.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say also, Paul, like in Rebecca's situation, did she get a whisper from a friend on the other side who also maybe saw some probabilities happening that Rebecca's own mind maybe didn't see? It's hard to say. When like I can tell a little bit more easily when it's me and when it's not me. In other words, when it's my mind perceiving it, or when it's another mind telling me. But a lot of people, that's difficult. And it took me several years to kind of discern that,
Yeah. We've had lots of people saying hi and where they're coming from. Hi, Chrissy. Hi, Steph. Listen, good to see you. Hi, Deb. It's good to see you guys coming on saying hello. Please feel free to join in, send your questions. We'd love to hear from you. So, okay, we're just about to go to an advert break, and we'll be back as soon as that's over.
My Spirit Life is a free online interactive magazine for those who have an interest in improving their spiritual lives. Authors can upload images, videos, and audio clips to their own articles. The public can place comments, rate the article, and follow the author. All articles are vetted before being published. For more information and to place your own article, please visit myspiritlife.co.uk. Tonight from 8 p.m, Bill Hughes and his guest will be demonstrating their mediumship abilities with free readings to our viewers. Join Debbie Romero and guests tomorrow from 6 p.m, offering spiritual guidance, support and readings. Around the Table with Neil Bryan, this starts from 8 p.m. tomorrow night. Join Neil for a live debate and thought-provoking evening with guests.
Welcome back, everyone. And you're joining me here on Spiritual Talk with Kelvin Chin. Kelvin, so we're talking about past lives and your experiences, and you do so many things around meditation, but you help people with dealing with the fear of death as well.
Right.
And can you explain a little bit of what that work is and how you help people? Because I think that's something that society kind of hides away, and we don't always talk about that, the idea of death and what it means for us. We don't always share that experience.
Right. Yeah. So I have a foundation. It's called Overcoming the Fear of Death Foundation, and I help people worldwide. Doesn't matter what their belief system is about death or dying. I take people wherever they're at. Doesn't matter their belief, and they do not have to embrace my belief about death and dying at all. I help them wherever they're at to reduce their fears. That's the goal of my work. Um, and I do individual sessions with people. Like I said earlier, people call me about any of my work, but especially that work. I get a lot of emails from people to schedule a free phone session with me, and I help them. Sometimes just the phone session alone can help people reduce and sometimes eliminate their fears just by talking with me, and I help them think about it a little bit differently. Very often people will choose, it's their choice. I never try to persuade people, as I said, but they'll choose to take my meditation course also because they may have tried other meditation classes that are very difficult and require clearing of the mind, and it's focusing and all that stuff. And the way I teach it, as you know, because you've taken my class, Paul, it's very, very easy. There's no concentration. It's not clearing the mind. And so a lot of
Calvin, sorry to interrupt you, but that's the hardest part. For a lot of people, clearing the mind is like, oh my gosh, that they find that the hardest part.
That's the hardest part, and that's why I don't teach it that way. It's not about clearing the mind. It's about allowing the mind to experience itself naturally, and then you overlay on top of it the technique that I teach, which allows the mind to stay in more or less what we'll call an undirected, unfocused, undirected state, which is what meditation usually talks about wanting to have in the first place.
Yeah.
But you can't do it by controlling the mind, because you can't trying not to try is still trying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Maxine's just made a comment. Hi, Maxine. I think it's magical. I saw my dad pass. He said, home, 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 winked, smiled, and off he went. Very beautiful, as sad as it is. Yeah.
That's a beautiful experience that she was fortunate to have. Wow.
Deborah Long has put, hi, Deborah. After my dad, brother, mum, son, and then sister passed, I found this channel, and now because of this channel, I do not fear death at all. Oh, well, that's a beautiful thing to say, and thank you, Deborah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and if I'm honest, I have the ability to connect to the spirit world. I've lost some very close, my father, my best friend. It does help me in terms of my own grief to deal with that I can still have that connection, although it took me 5 years for me to connect to my own father. And that's an interesting concept as well. Do you have any experiences of between lives where we're moving through consciousness, if you like?
Yeah, I do. The answer is yes, I do. And I've had several experiences in between. And the most recent one I talk about in the book because it literally happened while I was writing the book. I think it was either January or February this year, when I was swimming in the swimming pool doing my laps. I was doing backstroke laps, and so you kind of get into a rhythm, and you kind of get into a quasi meditative state, so to speak. And I saw myself on the other side, and I saw myself what I was seeing on Earth at the time, and I thought that it was around 1917, 1918 or something, and it's why I came back the previous lifetime, right before this one. Yeah.
Wow. And do we carry through those lifetimes? Do we carry any personality traits? Is it something, we are obviously genetically our parents, but is there personality traits or themes? Because you've had many past life memories. And I believe, Kelvin, in the books, you go back 6,000 years.
Yeah.
And that's a long time. And so therefore, if you're remembering experiences from maybe 6,000 years ago, can you actually recognize those within you now?
Yeah, the short answer is yes.
Okay.
I recognize personality traits, we call them, that have lasted all these many thousands of years. Now, how they express themselves and to what a degree, so how and to what degree, two things, they express themselves in a different lifetime may vary.
Yeah.
So it may express itself, more in one lifetime than another lifetime in a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. Like I'm not a battlefield commander this lifetime, and yet I have been in other lifetimes. It's not now, but can I think strategically, which is an essential personality trait that's of a successful battlefield commander? Absolutely. And have I, in a sense, figuratively speaking, you could say, worked in the corporate battlefields or the legal battlefields here in Kelvin Chin 21st century lifetime? Yes. Did I use those same strategic skills? Yes.
Yeah.
That trait persists, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Dawny Taylor, hi Dawny. Do you actually remember passing? If so, what happened? And I guess that's probably the biggest question. We'd all like to know, what is it like to pass into spirit world?
So the short answer is yes, I do remember for myself. The larger answer is for other people, because you're probably wondering, well, what's it going to be like for you? Because Kelvin, it may not be the same as Kelvin Chin, and it might not be the same as what I described. Because why? Because we all have our own mind, consciousness, soul, spirit, whatever we want to call it, and we have our own history, and we have our own belief systems, and we have our own fears and concerns and anxieties that we take with us. And so that means that when you hear people like, you would not hear me, for example, describing my dying experience of what I remember in a fearful way. But I'm sure your viewers have seen various YouTube videos where people are describing a fear-ridden experience when they die. Those are people who are carrying their fears with them, and their experience is filtered through their fears. And so they can project those into and create a fear-filled reality, almost like you can do in a dream. If you're feeling chill and happy, you're not going to have a fear-filled dream, right?
So we could almost say there's an art to dying.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why I do my work now in our biological bodies now, before we obviously biologically die, to help people reduce their fears now, because I'm helping people obviously live a more contented, inwardly peaceful life now, but also I'm preparing them for when they die.
Because really, fear is an emotion, and we're having a human experience full of emotion, and emotions experience in life. Take those fears away, then I'm not saying that we're not, surely there must be some essence of us understanding our passing with pain, because again, it's another experience. But once through, whether we want to call it, into the spirit world, I've heard it say from spirit that it's a joyous thing, and that sounds a little bit,
joyous because why, Paul? It's joyous for most people who are not fear-ridden. And that doesn't mean you have to get rid of all your fears, but I mean people who are really fear-ridden, they're the ones who have the really negative dying experiences that they talk about. But most people, it's a joyous, relieving experience because you don't have a biological body anymore. So you don't have to worry about health concerns. You don't have any pain, physical pain, all the biological, physical stuff that does not exist anymore. And you don't have to go to a job because you don't have to feed this thing we call a body. We don't have to shelter it and all that. So it's a lot easier. I tell my students, it's like vacation mode on the other side, really. Because our mind, our soul, our energy continues, and our individuality continues. We don't merge into some cosmic soup. So you remember who you are. Your personality persists. It continues, and as you can see from my book, it seems to continue from lifetime to lifetime. So it's not all of a sudden exiting on the other side and comes back into me, it's continuing with me through my experience and living on the other side and then back into another lifetime. Right?
I'm sorry, Calvin. So I'm sorry. I've got to ask the question. So when we go to the other side, I mean, I've got to ask this, and I always assume that sometimes when I have a grumpy old man coming in, that it's an evidential point of view, what he was like in this life. You know, he moaned at the cat, you know, that kind of thing, kicked the dog when it was in the way, that kind of stuff. But actually, do we still carry on, or do we have a sense of enlightenment, understanding, knowledge? Are we more empowered, I guess, with a sense of what and who we are?
It depends on the person, you know. So that grumpy old man that you're describing, I would say probably not, because his personality is so closed down. It doesn't matter if he has a biological body, and he doesn't have a biological body on the other side anymore, and he still comes through to you to communicate with somebody as a grumpy old man, because that's his personality. It's not associated with his physical biological body. But I would say for people who are open and they're more receptive and they're open-minded and they're curious, yeah, I think that people are more than positively susceptible to what you're talking about, and more open awareness to certain knowledge areas, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not automatic. That's the thing. That's the way I've had some like high school friends of mine who've taken some of my classes, and we've grown up together. And some of them said, well, I'm so disappointed because in church they told us that, you know, when you died, all of a sudden you were enlightened. And I was like, no, you know, you didn't all of a sudden know how to play tennis when you die, you know, because you never played tennis before, you know.
Shucks. We've got a great comment from Kim. Hi, Kim Byrne. Lovely to see you here tonight. Have you met people from past lives? She asks. My brother and ex-partner was told they had been together over many lifetimes. Interesting. Someone told me once that my son was my father, and I can tell you sometimes he talks to me like he's my dad. No, so it's quite an interesting dynamic. Yeah,
the short answer is yes. Many of my friends and family I remember from other lifetimes. My daughter, at least 3 times, maybe more, who knows, but at least 3 lifetimes we can identify, and I mentioned him in my book, and my son also, who I mentioned in my book. We talk about the lifetimes, the overlaps, and so forth. And then I have friends who we remember each other from other lifetimes and so forth. So it's very interesting because it's that connection, you know, sometimes we feel that unusual, weird connection. It's inexplicable.
Yeah, you know, how many mothers I've heard, I've met this one, but she's been here many times before. She's an old soul, and on some level we're recognizing it, but maybe not appreciating that fact that you've had those experiences together over lifetimes. That's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. The thing is, people always point to genetics because they're in physical body. And yes, genetics plays a role in terms of how we're influenced and certainly how we physically come out and so forth.
Yeah.
But the personality and the soul transcends all of the genetics. It really does. Yeah. And so it's not that genetics are nothing. It does have an effect, but it's not like people. You'll see some of these kids, I mean, in the stories of some young children who are young musical prodigies at 3 years old, and nobody in their family knows anything about music, any experience or with music.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us back again to that if I'm sitting here at home and I've just listened to this interview, okay, do you know, I feel things. I know I've done some meditation, and I've had past life experiences I was in the British Navy at least 3 times. And when I was 12 till I was 16, I was obsessing of joining the Navy. I had every picture of every ship in the British Navy on the wall. It's a lot smaller now, the British Navy, but at the time it was quite big.
Yeah.
How do I heal those experiences, and why do they keep coming up in my meditations?
Well, first of all, it may not need to be healed. It could just be memories coming up. So the fact that memories come up doesn't necessarily mean that there's a healing that needs to take place. Healing needs to take place where there's some trauma or some unfinished business or some hurt that is there, the way I look at it. But, you know, the way to deal with it, to heal, to me, is meditation is crucial, because I'm connecting inside and I'm balancing my brain and blood chemistry out. And yes, these past life experiences do affect our biological body, and they can scar us literally and figuratively and leave impressions in our chemistry. So that's one way, angle of healing. Another angle of healing is understanding what mistakes we may have made, or choices. Sometimes they're mistakes, but they're choices at very least neutrally. And could we have made better choices, and so forth? So learning from that, to me, that's the healing, because going forward is what these are all helping us do, is to move forward, live in the continual present, but in a better way moving forward.
An interesting comment from Chrissy. Hi, Chrissy. Thank you for joining us. Is it true when you dream of falling or drowning and you wake up, is it true this is how you died in the past life?
It's hard to say absolutely. I mean, you wouldn't say it's absolutely the case all the time. It could have been a movie you saw, you know, and it just left an impression. But if it seems so viscerally real to you, that's one of the things that I talk about, you know, looking at, you know, that we look at how emotionally intense is it?
Yes.
What's the degree? And what kind of other sensory experiences you may have that go along with it, like touch and smell and taste. And do you taste the salt water like I did in my slave experience? Do you feel the water in your dream? And it's not to say that you have to, but these are elements, I call them, where we have more of these elements, it's more likely that it's past life related. And then the third category of filtration is to look at, are there any external corroborative sources, like you know, your aunt tells you, oh yeah, you know what, I remember we went and we were swimming and we lost sight of you once, and they didn't know that whether you almost drowned or not, but maybe they lost sight of you and you were upset when you came back. That would be like an example of a third party who you don't even, I mean, you know them, but you didn't know what they knew, and they're telling you new information.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point, how, because we can come across, you know, nightmare scenarios that we're having. If it's not that having that emotion and that context of that emotion in your experience, then it's likely to be a bit of psychic junk, isn't it?
It could. It's more likely. Again, these are all probabilities. Nothing. It doesn't mean that you have to have this emotionally intense experience for it to be a past life, because that memory. Because I've had lots of past life memories that I mentioned in my book, which they didn't come initially along with many powerful emotional stuff. It was just a vision or a knowingness or a something. But yeah, the more likely it is when it was a lot more emotional stuff, but it still could be past life related. It's hard to say.
Hi, Carol. She's put an interesting comment. Because a lot of people suffer loss and trauma in their daily lives today. And through meditation, I believe we can heal some of those experiences. Carol's asked, how can we heal from a type of grieving where the person is still alive, a family member that is estranged, and so on?
Yeah. That requires processing the current grief experience through a process. The process that I've found that works really well is called the grief recovery method. Yeah. It's an actual method that I got certified in. But you would want to find somebody in your area who does what's called the grief recovery method. It's a very good process, and we don't really have time to go through the whole thing. But basically, it'll take you through a very specific, and there's exercises. There's specific exercises. Okay, go home and here's your homework to do this, and there's a book involved and so forth. You can check it out online, the Grief Recovery Method, or Grief Recovery Handbook, I think it's called. It's an inexpensive book. It's on Amazon, and you can read what the authors. It's not my book, but it's a very good book, and you can read it and then find somebody to help you go through those exercises. That's what I would recommend.
That's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. And if we can find the link, we'll put it up somewhere, Carol. Okay, so you can access that. Thank you for that question, Carol. Also, I know. Oh, Deb's put a quick question. Why is it people our souls instantly recognize can be amazingly close friends for months, then block you? Interesting. Then I think we've all had that experience, Deb. Then come back again, get close, and block you again. But we've had about 7 past lives together.
Yep, that's a really, really good question. So this goes to the point that I make in my classes sometimes, which is just because you've had a really, really strong connection and a knowing that you've had a past life with somebody does not mean you want to marry them.
Brilliant. How many people based on relationships? I've met you from somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, you have this incredible connection, and maybe you've forgotten. In this case, you're talking about she actually remembers. But maybe what if the situation then you forgot, and then you got married, and then you remember? Oh no!
Oh, actually, yeah.
This is the person. Oh God, them again. You know. Yeah. So the fact that we have had past relationships does not mean they're all good.
Yeah, absolutely. But healing that experience and why we keep going through the same experience, the lesson is in there somewhere.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. So learning from that and observing what was it. So this is what I would take away from that. What is it about that relationship that informed me about that person, that also informed me about what my likes and dislikes and needs were that did not match? And so going forward now, let me remember that in terms of selection of friends or loved ones or whoever, partners or whatever the relationship.
Yeah. And quick one from Jasmine. Hi, Jasmine again. What has been your most significant memory of a past life? Wow, that's a big one, Calvin.
That's a big one, and it's hard to pick. You know, it's people ask me this question.
I'm going to promote this book at that point.
Yeah,
check this out. After the Afterlife.
Yeah, it's a tough one to answer. So I've already kind of answered it in one way. I'm going to answer it another way. And the way I've already answered that question is I talked about the slave lifetime and how I stayed alive by, the power of my mind. So we mentioned that. So let me give you another one. So significant memory is a recent one from the 1800s when I was I was a shaman and I was a leader of the Lakota nation, the Lakota tribe in what we now call the United States. And the significant memory of that is I have 2 really significant memories of that stand out. One is how much I loved the lifestyle. How much I loved the lifestyle before the U.S. government came in and decimated the native population by killing off the food supply and the bison and so forth. 60 million bison to 540 bison in less than 100 years. Most of them within 50 years from 1840 to 1890. So, which was the bulk of my adult lifetime then. So I visually saw it. So the sadness, to answer the question, that sadness. So I have the happiness before that, and then I have the sadness afterwards. I talk about it in my book, and it's very emotionally still disturbing for me. So to the other people's questions about healing, that's the one that I have the most. Still.
Yeah. Maggie's asked name of the book, and it's as I was showing up here, guys, if you can see it on screen, After the Afterlife. Okay, as a great collection of Calvin's experiences. There's also 2 other books as well. While we're here, Calvin, we're just going to plug this as well. Marcus Aurelius Updated, and also Overcoming the Fear of Death. Okay, I'll recommend those as well. But what is next for you, Calvin? What is next for you?
Well, next for me is I am relaxing from writing books, because anybody who's written a book, it takes a lot out of you. And and I'm speaking a lot about this and teaching more. It's interesting. One thing, if we could say one thing that I have really learned that shifted in me over the 6,000 years is my teaching and how I'm teaching. And I've thought a lot, as you can tell. I've thought a lot about spirituality over the millennia. And I think we've had it all wrong for many of these thousands of years, where we've tried to conform somebody to a religious belief or an institutional belief, a set of rules, and you got to think this way to be a spiritual person and whatever. And my approach now instead is to be more, talk about concepts like we're talking about today. Talk about concepts, talk about cruelty, I talk about free will, and to teach these concepts in order to plant seeds in people's minds to help them adjust their own thinking at their own pace, as opposed to pushing a belief system or a dogma on them, and therefore respecting their own free will to develop and grow at the pace that they need and want to. So that's really what I'm doing now, is spreading seeds now. And everybody who's listening is, another seed planter, the way I look.
Absolutely.
And I take the long view of looking at helping humanity. I take the long view now, since my memories go back so far. I'm looking forward like 500 or 1,000 years, 50,000, 500,000 years is the way I look at planting these seeds. And hopefully they'll germinate more and more and more, so people will think more kindly, less cruelly, more clearly. Because if cruel people thought more clearly, they'd realize they're creating a world of miserable people around them. But that's a long-term project, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if we've got time, Richard. If we've got time for one more question.
Sure.
Okay. We'll carry on. Hi, Serena. Good to see you again. And she's asked, I know we kind of touched on this, but I'll add a little caveat onto that. But during your past life memories, have you ever remembered any transition into the spirit world, like a specifically difficult one?
A difficult transition? No.
Yeah.
My transitions have not been difficult. I know some people have difficult transitions. So here's my teaching point on it. I think my transitions have not been difficult because I've spent so many thousands of years connecting with myself. And even in lifetimes, you know that I've had several lifetimes as Buddhist monks. I've had several lifetimes as Egyptian high priests and so forth, etc. So but I've had lots of lifetimes where I'm not in a spiritual role per se, but I've always been kind of looking within. So to me, that's the formula, is to look within, and by looking within more, we reduce our fears, and therefore our transitions to the other side, or anything in life, quite frankly, any big change in life, because that's what death is, really. It's not, you don't die, your biology dies, but you don't die. Your soul continues. But it's a major transition, right, for people. So any kind of transition or change, how do you cope with that better? You cope with that better by connecting with yourself. So to me, I've done that for so many thousands of years in all different ways. Even when I was an animal, when I was an eagle, I had that lifetime, right?
Calvin. So you've actually incarnated as an animal?
Yes.
So are we going along the lines of like the Buddhist belief system, that we incarnate from an ant all the way up to the human? That's bearing in mind that we are at the top of the tree. It might be the whales, it might be the dolphins that are way more intelligent than us. Who knows? But is that what you're saying?
So there's you have multiple questions.
I've jumped the gun there a little bit. I'm so sorry. We'll break it down a little bit.
We have multiple questions in there, so I'll answer them. So the big question is, or the big assumption and sub-question you made was that in some traditions, the thinking is that we evolve and grow through past lives through the animal kingdom and then eventually humans and so forth. So I think that is generally true, but it's not a structural thing that's set up that way by some entity who sets things up. I think that's generally true because most animals, or some animals, choose to be humans because they've observed humans and they've thought, well, it's curious, so maybe be a human. So dogs and cats and horses and maybe guinea pigs, I don't know, whatever, are like the most common precursors to humans. But I remember being an eagle in between human lifetimes. So
Okay.
and I have other friends who also have had those kind of memories where they remember being human for thousands of years and then chose to be an animal and then have been humans for thousands of years since. So for me, it's been hundreds of years since I was an eagle, but thousands of years before that, I was human. So I chose to be, and it was after, it's in my monastic period. I call it my monastic period, where I had my Buddhist lifetimes, and I was an eagle. And so it was a very solo lifetime, pretty much, pretty much solitude, and very much like my monastery lifetimes. And I enjoyed it. And I had, I get into details in terms of some of the experience I had then. So yeah, you can jump. Your mind can jump around if it wants to. I don't think most people would choose to do what I did, but I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit weird, right?
No, not at all. So as a question I want to come back to, Richard, which was Maxine's. I've written it down in case I missed it, because that's something that I find I'd really like to talk about. But Donna just also mentioned she'd like to come back as a dog and be treated and have an owner like her. So that's really sweet. That's really sweet. Okay, yeah. But this is a big question. So brace yourself for this. Do we actually meet source? And this is from Maxine Entwistle. Hi, Maxine. Thank you for that question. It's a great question.
Do we actually meet source? So what does she mean by source?
Are we allowed to term it? Is it God, creator, intelligence? Okay.
So here's the thing. So you and I've talked about this offline before, about the 30th November talk, 30thnovember.com. Yeah. I'm not going to get in and give this lecture. That's a totally different talk. I helped organize it. But most people would refer to Jehovah as God or Allah. Some people in some traditions may even view Krishna as Jehovah as well. Yahweh in the ancient Hebrew tradition, so forth. So I communicate with Jehovah. Jehovah is a personality. I don't view Jehovah as God. I can communicate with Jehovah now, and he pokes his head in sometimes in my classes sometimes, but it's a personality. It's not, I've never had any experience on the other side of a capital G God figure the way humans think of God.
Yeah.
So, as an omniscient, omnipresent, somebody who's controlling everything. Now, could there be a creator of human beings before our souls incarnated into a human form? Yes, that's possible. But a creator of a human biological form. But in my opinion, this is my opinion, okay? People can take it or leave it. But my logic and my experience tells me that our souls are eternal.
Okay.
That's my logic tells me that, and we can get into that. That's a whole other 2-hour discussion. Yeah. But my logic tells me that, and my experience over 6,000 years, which is not eternity, it's 6,000 years, is that my personality continues. My soul continues in the form of a personality, takes the form of a personality. So what does eternity mean? Eternity means no beginning, no end. That means there's no need for a creator of a soul. And I think there's therefore a finite number of souls that have existed it begs the question that people wonder, well, but who created it? You know,
that's the problem. That is the big. I mean, science, even science today, is struggling with.
That's the conundrum that people.
Yeah.
So people, I understand it. I respect it. I'm not here to argue with people or question it. I fully agree that it's a conundrum that's very difficult to get one's mind around and one's heart around emotionally, really.
Yeah.
Is there a beginning, or is there just a continuum that has existed for eternity?
Yeah.
In my opinion,
I sometimes wonder if it's too much for the human brain to conceive, or the mind to conceive. I'm not sure. Yeah. There's some big questions there. I guess coming back to Maxine's point, do we actually experience the Jehovah when we're over the other? Do we feel that vibration, that energy? Now, in my mediumship, I'll never forget a message I had from a brother that had passed into the spirit world, and there was his sister was in the audience. She was 90 years old, and she was sitting at the front of the audience, and it was the shortest message I've ever given, even to this day. And he just come through. He gave me his name. His name was Ian, and he said, "Tell my sister that God is great. God is real. He really exists." Now, for her, it turns out after the show, her granddaughter wanted me to meet this lady, and that was all it was, the entirety of the message. There was nothing else. And for her, that was the best thing ever. She just accepted there was a God. She goes to church every week. Her brother belonged to the Philosophical Society. He was a doctor. He traveled the world looking for God. On his deathbed, he said to his sister, "I really hope there's a God." So having that message come through. But the interesting thing for me was the gold vibration in which he came, which was around him when he came in. There was this higher resonance, this higher vibration of gold light around him.
Yeah. So my experience with all of that is that, first of all, I'll go to the practical point, which is, have I ever told people who are dying that God will be waiting for them on the other side? Because I know that's their belief system. Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're asking me if I have experienced what these people project that they want to experience, the answer is no. And in the gold light and the gold vibration and all this, there are so many beings on the other side who can project gold light and gold vibrations. There's millions of beings who can do that. So there's even beings who are incarnated on planet Earth in biological bodies who can project that into your consciousness today, before you biologically die. So all of that is real, it's genuine, and it has to be put in perspective, in my opinion. This is what I teach in my classes. So I teach people how to discern, how to distinguish between what is and what does it match with common sense and this, that, and the other thing. The bottom line on the other side is that there are more religions in heaven than there are on planet Earth. And in Wikipedia, it claims that there are 4,000 known religions on planet Earth right now. 4,000. So there's more than that on the other side. So that person, Ian, has a belief system, and he genuinely believed when he came through that whoever he experienced on the other side, or whatever he experienced, was God. I can't tell you how many people who have had NDEs
oh my gosh, my own father had one.
When they describe to me what their NDE is, very often, not always, again, there's a huge range of NDEs, we know that. Very often, and I was just listening to one before this podcast, somebody's NDE, and it sounded to me like somebody who had never experienced the vastness of their mind and the love of themselves that comes from experiencing the vastness of connecting with oneself. Which, as you know, I've been meditating for 52 years. So that started happening with me 52 years ago. It's like no big deal. But if you've never had that experience before, I completely can understand How if you have a near-death experience and you start to experience the vastness of your own self, you interpret that as God.
Yeah.
Because the love experience that she was describing was so sublime and powerful. I get it. I understand that. So I don't criticize people for that, but you're asking me, how to interpret these. And once you've had, many, 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 many dozens or hundreds or thousands of these experiences, then you have something to compare it to and you go, oh, okay, that's that. That's not what I thought it was. So
there is some interesting, there's so many issues and side conversations going off on tangents we could have about the whole process. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead and Dying and the 12 stages of passing. I mean, was there anything like that experience? Was it literally instant? I mean, we interviewed a lady, oh my gosh, her name's gone out of my mind. Apologies if she's listening. Where she literally had this memory where she died of a heart attack on the hospital bed, and she said it was like someone had flipped me over in the bed, and I walked through, and my husband was there to hold me.
Exactly.
I mean, how beautiful is that? That is so beautiful.
And it's immediate in her case.
Yeah.
So the whole Tibetan Book of the Dead, you got these stages and stuff. People love that stuff because they want certainty. And I understand where the desire for certainty comes from. It's understandable that people feel out of control. They want more control. And they
want context, don't they? They want a context. They want a framework.
Yeah, they want a framework, and they feel like, well, I'm going to go through this step and this step. Or you hear people talk about levels, and you got to graduate. There's no levels on the other side unless you want to be in levels. And so the people who want to be in levels on the other side go through levels. And they'll come back and they'll be the variation of Ian who says there's absolutely levels on the other side because that's their experience.
That's what they need. Yeah.
I tell people it's analogous to imagine if an alien was beamed down to planet Earth and they came here to just explore and see what humanity was like. And they erroneously got beamed into Folsom Prison, a high security prison. And and that was their sole experience because they couldn't get out. They beamed into a human form into a Folsom prison. It was a high security prison. And that was there, and then they get and they're there for 25 years, and they go, okay, we're beaming you back up. So what was it like on planet Earth? That's their description.
Yeah.
They fully it, and they tell everybody on the other alien planet, this is what planet Earth is like. That's the variation of Ian in your example. So it's not that Ian's making it up, or that's his genuine belief because he experienced and he interpreted a certain way.
Oh my gosh, there's so much we could talk about, Calvin, and I just want to come to people have been sending in messages and questions, and we'll come honestly. Joanne Wood, thank you for being patient. I'm gonna ask Calvin your question. How do we manage to get such a clear vision of past lives? Is that a technique, Calvin, or is it just a natural process of meditating?
That's a tough question because there's no real answer to it. I've never had a past life regression in my life. It just completely spontaneously started happening to me. I didn't believe in past lives. I didn't believe in an afterlife. I didn't believe in heaven. So it's like this stuff just started happening. Now, what I think can accelerate, this kind of goes to her answer a little bit, I think can accelerate is turning within in some manner and connecting with oneself. And so that the meditation helped me? Yeah, I think it did. I think it accelerated it. Might I have anyway opened up my past life memories? Yes, who knows? We will never know. But I've had other clients of mine who've never meditated before, and they've had past life memories. So it's not a prerequisite, but can it help facilitate and speed things up? Sure, I think so.
Sure. Yeah. I wanted to quickly ask you about your earliest memories, going back those 6,000 years. What was life like on planet Earth?
It was very similar to this, except I would say harsher.
Yeah.
I think we forget, especially with COVID and getting locked up in our houses for 2 years or however long it was. People forget. It was a lot harsher years ago. I mean, people don't. I bet you most of your viewers don't know this, that in the United States, in this may have been probably similar in Europe as well. In the United States of America, half of the households did not have indoor plumbing in the 1940s.
Yeah.
1940s. Okay, not that long, less than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Half of all the households, you had to go outside to go to the bathroom. So, no indoor plumbing. So, things have progressed. They've gotten better. So,
absolutely.
But here's the converse of that is that the minds have pretty much, we need to get past more of our cruelty. It's amazing how similar our minds still are over thousands of years.
Yeah. And how would you suggest that we could approach that?
Well, that's what I do, right? We talked about earlier where I'm taking the approach of teaching concepts to people and encouraging people to make more healthy free will decisions that they perceive in their own self-interest, because we're all self-interested. Now, self-interest is different from selfish. Now we're talking about this book,
Yeah.
It's a collection of 67 essays, and several of the essays are about what I'm talking about, which is what self-interest is not the same as being selfish. Yeah. Being self-interested is being selfish, but everybody is self-interested. We need to look out for ourselves. Well, I suggest that one of the teachings that I do is to look in a relationship with somebody and what is in their self-interest, and can I meet them? That's going to be more loving relationship. When I'm helping them meet their interests, it helps me meet my interest in loving them too. So that's a shift in perspective. That's a big shift in people's human perspective. Most people are looking out for themselves all the time at the exclusion of others. The self-interest is normal, but let's expand it so that we can see that my self-interest actually is in having happier people around me, not bullying them and making them miserable.
Yeah.
Long term.
Wasn't it? Kindness goes a long way.
Yeah.
Simple kindness. Yeah. Joanne Wood has put, I was asleep in bed when mine started. 2 came to me at different stages of sleep over 3 months. And the third was whilst watching a program on TV. I was blown away. Have you had, so you don't have to be, in a meditation to have these past life experiences?
No. It's happened to me in the shower, driving in my car, just lying down, resting, it's happened to me at all different times. Doesn't really matter. Yeah.
And that's an interesting part of your meditation process that you do. You encourage people to rest after the meditation to get the value of the meditation.
Yes, resting afterwards is really important. Yeah.
Kelvin Chin, thank you so much for coming on this evening. We are going to have to go soon because there's another program starting very soon.
That's good.
It's been Richard just said I must be psychic. So it's been,
people just find my website kelvinchin.org.
Yes.
That's the easiest way, and they can find my books there. They can find all the different types of work that I do, and they can contact me via the contact page for a free phone session worldwide about anything that I do.
Thank you, Kelvin. It's been brilliant. I also want to thank everybody at home that's come in this evening, coming to join us, being a part of the conversation. It's been brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Look out for more spiritual talk on SBTV. We've got a lot more guests lined up. I know the lovely Diana Cooper is coming on very soon as well, so look out for that. Thank you so much, Dawny. Thank you. It's been brilliant. Also, if you want to see more interviews, we've got a back catalogue on spiritual talk. You can check out our channel. But for now, guys, it's time to go, and we will see you all very soon. Stay tuned. There's a great program coming up in a few minutes.